I am Eric Greenberg, Chair of the CA Board of Directors. Please remember that this meeting of the CA Board of Operations Committee is being recorded but not live streamed. You can find tonight's agenda and background materials on the CA Board of Operations Committee webpage on the CA website. If you are virtual, please mute your microphones unless speaking. If you are in the room, please ensure that your cell phones are silenced. Raise your hand to speak, and I will record names in the order which I see them. If you are virtual, please use the chat feature. As we move through this meeting, I will introduce each item on the agenda. Before a vote is taken, I will restate the motion as well as who motioned and who seconded. If at any point you are having trouble hearing me or any other board member, please say so. I will now call the roll of the voting members of tonight's BOC agenda. Ginny?
Yes.
Dick?
Here.
Sherry?
Here.
I'm here, and Lakey's here.
Yes.
So, okay, now can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Are there any objections? Agenda is approved. We don't have any resident speaker tonight, do we?
Nope.
Okay. Approval of minutes by consent. Discussion of the selected topics for inclusion on the agenda and for the Board of Directors work sessions. So the first item on the agenda is the June 9th BOD. Yes?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
I'd like to put on the agenda May 26th, the Moms Against Gun Violence resolution they've been asking us to hear, which we did 2 years ago and approved. Amend the agenda for May 26th to include that under on the May 26th agenda. It would be included under number 6 board votes. It would be discussed and voted on May 26th in order to meet their deadline. I believe Calvin Ball is doing something on May 3rd at the Howard Building, and I don't know if CA plans on doing anything or not.
June 3rd.
Pardon me?
June 3rd.
June 3rd, yeah. But May 26th would be the agenda item where we would hear it and vote on it. Number 6, it would be added to number 6 on the May 22nd agenda.
Under board votes?
Yes.
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second.
So is that on this agenda that you're working on
I was going to say, you'd have to amend this agenda and have it on here.
So you want to amend tonight's agenda?
No,
Correct.
No, Thursday's agenda.
Well, I'm amending this tonight to allow for an amendment to the
Oh,
May
I thought you had
26th.
already approved the agenda.
Well, I'm asking for an amendment to it.
So can we have a motion to amend this agenda?
That's right.
Yes.
First, and then you
That's
would
what
want
we're
to
doing.
add May
That's what we
26th?
Okay, so.
That's what we're doing. Under
Okay.
number 5 on this agenda, I'm asking for an amendment that would allow May 26th to be added to this agenda and allow for an item that would include the resolution that Moms Against Gun Violence asked us to consider.
So I have a motion to amend the current agenda for tonight's meeting to add the resolution for Thursday's meeting, and I've got a second by Dick. Are there any objections?
Eric, I had my hand up.
Yes, Alan?
I had also asked previously formally to have the question on Thursday's agenda of the Briggs request for a waiver of the nepotism policy.
Can I hold off on that until we get this motion
If we're
approved?
opening up the agenda, that's why I thought maybe this was the time to open up the agenda.
Yes, but we got to handle one motion at a time.
Right.
So,
Yeah, this is the first amendment.
So this is the first amendment. Are there any objections to this amendment to the agenda? There being no objections, today's agenda is amended to add a discussion for adding the resolution for the May 26th board meeting. Are there any other amendments proposed for tonight's agenda?
I would like it to be proposed. I don't have a vote. I don't know if I'm able to make a motion and have others vote on it or how that works.
If you don't make a motion, you can suggest that it be included.
You can suggest and someone can make the motion.
Right.
I have made that suggestion formally
So-
twice. Yes.
Okay, so are there any, so do I have a motion, any other motions to amend tonight's agenda? Okay. There being none, can I get a motion to pass the current amended agenda?
So moved.
Ginny moves. Do I have a second? And Dick seconds. Are there any objections?
Objections to tonight's
To
agenda?
tonight's agenda with the amendment to add the resolution for May 26th on tonight's agenda. So we'll have a discussion to add the May 26th, for the May 26th meeting.
Okay.
So there being no objections, the agenda passes as amended.
Okay.
Approval of minutes by consent. No objections. The minutes are passed. So moving on to tonight's agenda, the first topic is the May 26th
Okay.
board meeting.
All right. Basically, I think under it would fit under number 6, board votes. It could at some point, depending on how, well, let's leave it under number 6, 5 minutes for both discussion and a vote. I don't think it'll take much more than that.
So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second? Any other discussion? Sherry?
Yeah, I just had a question. Have we seen the resolution?
Yeah, I'm sorry, they sent it around. I'll get it again to you.
Yeah, I think that'd be good to make sure it's sent out so
I
everyone
think it's
has it.
pretty much, I mean, I think I've
No,
seen it in other,
yeah.
I think it's pretty much what we approved a couple of years ago.
Yeah, but they sent,
Okay.
yeah, I'll make sure everybody gets it tomorrow again, yeah.
Okay.
came from the Moms Against Gun Violence.
And can you clarify again how much time you're adding to the agenda?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. So I've got a motion by Ginny, a second by Dick to add 5 minutes to the May 26th agenda for the resolution. Are there any objections? Motion passes. Will you be able to update the packet accordingly? Thanks.
Well, we would need to have the resolution. Who is sending that to us?
Ginny, can you send the resolution?
Yeah, I'll have the Moms Against.
I know a citizen has sent us something previously, but the board is
Yeah,
putting
yeah.
the content on the
I'll take
agenda.
responsibility for
Okay.
getting what they sent. What?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Janet saying to send it to her?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Next on the agenda is the June 9th BOD work session.
I have one adjustment from the draft that is in the packet, and that is that there's a utility easement listed for Lumen Technologies, and we need to remove that. It's allocated for 15 minutes on June 9th. They are not ready,
Okay.
so.
Can I get
Delete it.
Can I get a second to remove the easement? Any objections? The easement is removed from the June 9th agenda.
Who seconded?
Dick seconded.
Thank you.
Are there any other adjustments to the June 9th agenda,
Yes.
Ginny?
Yeah, I'd like to use your 15 minutes for discussion of the advisory committees. We'll be hearing from them on May 26th, and Eric sent out today requesting that the board make sure they read what was already sent to them, and there will be discussion then. But if there's any additional discussion, I think the 10 to 15 minutes will do it. We'll use the 15 minutes there for that. And then there would be a vote on it the following meeting, but I'll get to that later.
Can you clarify the goal of that discussion? So I need to be clear what staff would be responsible for. It sounds like what you're describing is pure board discussion.
They may have questions for the staff. It would be good if,
You're saying in reference to the advisory committees.
exactly, this is for the advisory
Okay,
committee's
so there
discussion.
would be no staff role in that then?
It's a
Well,
policy thing. I don't
pardon me?
think, it's a simple policy question.
Yeah, I think it depends on what the board questions are, but I would think there'd be some Thursday night. And then if there's any additional ones, I'm sure Eric will be asking the board to please send them in writing before the June 9th meeting, if possible. If somebody has one that night, you don't want to say, no, you can't ask that question. And the vote wouldn't be till 2 weeks from then, so I'm sure if the staff person isn't here that night, they can get the board an answer in the next couple of days after that.
Okay, so I'm not following what you're saying. So in order for us to post, as you know, we post a week before. So we would need to be clear on the content of what we're posting. And so from your description, it sounds like you want to have 15 minutes on the agenda for the board to talk about what they heard from the advisory committee report outs. Is
What
that
they-
accurate?
What they heard and possible changes
So
to the charge.
yeah, so the
We
way,
don't know what they'll be asking.
No, I
It's board
understand you don't know
discussion.
so it's just board discussion. That's
On
what
the,
it sounds like.
on the presentations from the FY22 advisory committees, there'll be a more additional discussion.
Okay.
Now, if the board, yeah, so that would be the answer to your question.
Okay, that's all I was looking
yeah,
for.
and this would be needed because there'd be a vote on the advisory committee charges the following meeting.
Well, I follow that. I need to be very clear tonight on any staff support and what's just board discussion. Obviously, you can have any content you want to discuss during a meeting. I just wanted to be clear.
Okay, and I think,
So,
Another change?
wait, so we got to, so
so moved.
So we got a motion by Ginny to add a discussion of the advisory committees for 15 minutes on June 9th. Do I have a second? I got a second by Sherry. Sherry is first. Is there any more discussion on this topic?
No.
Any objections to adding it? No objections? It is.
The only thing I wanted to say is maybe, maybe as people are coming, I mean, there'll be, let me see if I understand this. When the advisory committees are presenting on Thursday, will there be time to ask questions at that point?
So the way I understand the schedule for this Thursday is each advisory committee gets 10 minutes. And I'm guessing that the advisory committees are probably going to take up most of that 10 minutes with their presentations. So there's probably not going to be that much time for questions.
Okay, so it sounds like we're going to need that time, that board members are also probably going to confine themselves to 1 or 2 questions, not more than that, if we're only putting in 15 minutes for that.
And I would assume Eric would be telling them if you have any questions in the next couple of days, so put it in writing so we'd all know what it is, and the staff would have time to maybe make some response.
Yes.
Or the
So that was
advisory-
my only concern about what Lakey said, is that if there are follow-up questions afterwards and there's not going to be a whole lot of time, if staff have to answer anything, Lakey and the staff need to know about that.
Yeah, I do have one.
agree.
Yeah, I do have one question is the June 9th meeting, we can't assume that the advisory committees are going to be present. So if we have,
They will not be.
so
We would not ask them to be.
yeah, so if we have questions directed at them, those questions would need to have to come in beforehand so that they have a chance to at least address the question.
Or it goes through the liaison.
Yeah, or goes to the liaison.
Okay.
But it needs to, I mean, it needs to come up beforehand so that the question gets to the advisory committee so they can,
Okay, so we may
So they can
have
address it.
questions or not, but I think we just need to take that into account
Yeah.
with those 15 minutes. Okay.
so we could, if they finish in like 8 minutes, there might be time for a question or two, but it can't go on for a half an hour for each one.
Yeah, but you could, yeah, Sherry, I think the concern was, while it's on for discussion, there was nothing listed in the agendas for how to vote on them. And one of our jobs is to
Right.
Yes.
approve the charges or not, or change them.
Right.
So there was no method here for how to do that. And last year, we heard them, and then nothing was done until September, yet their charges, and the things they want to do start May 1st. so it wasn't fair to the advisory committee. So this is an attempt to,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
That makes sense. Okay,
And then also get the vote out of the way as quick as possible.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can we call the question? Are there any objections to the motion as stated of adding the advisory committees for 15 minutes?
No.
No objections. The advisory committees is added to the June 9th meeting for 15 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other changes needed for the June 9th work session?
Oh, where the president's CEO was. Is that a draft? Goals and objectives? For June 9th? Wait a minute, ethics policy revision. I'm not sure. Okay, I'll start with the first one. Ethics policy revision, depending on what process you decide to use on May 26th, it's a very real possibility that this is not going to be viable.
So on May 26th, there's no discussion of the ethics policy?
We didn't prepare the agenda for May 26th, so I don't see anything there. I don't know how it got prepared.
There's the next time the ethics policy is scheduled to be discussed, according to the current agenda, is June 9th.
Yeah. Oh, it says revision. So it's a discussion thing, okay.
So right now, that's...
Who would be doing that?
So on April 28th, the discussion of the Board of Directors was that more discussion time was needed because there was a motion failed to move it to a vote. And so when we drafted the agendas, the staff took the guidance from the April 28th discussion that it was very important and we needed to have a lot more time to discuss it in order to vote on it, and thus put it on a work session topic on June 9th, another hour on June 23rd, and then a final discussion on July 14th, to then go to a vote on July 28th. Again, this is draft, but we are in the ethics policy revision process, and that's why it's called ethics policy revision.
Okay, I guess my only concern, and we can always let it go, and then depending on how things are working, change agendas. But I'm not sure the new board members really don't need to be brought up to speed. So, okay, if you want to leave it just like that, and then we'll see what happens.
I'd like to change ethics policy revision to ethics policy process.
What?
What?
I don't understand the significance of the change.
To revision process, how we're going to go about revising the ethics policy.
So you want to discuss so are you moving to discuss the process of changing the ethics policy versus what's the content of the ethics policy?
Yes.
So I've got a motion by Dick to replace ethics policy.
I need clarification on that if we're expected to support that. So what do you mean by that? Because we've had two discussions, and at the last meeting, the request was to have more time for discussion of the content because it was very important to discuss the content. So I'm confused on what we would be discussing that would be process.
Well, I'd be glad to fill you in on that. Back several months ago, when we first started talking about the ethics policy, I suggested that, first of all, we have a discussion of what we saw, what the board saw as the problems with the current ethics policies, and perhaps give Wes some input as to what sort of changes we'd like to see. And that was ignored. And instead, Wes went off to revise the policy however he felt it needed to be revised, and then came to us with a draft. And I don't think that's, and then left it up to 10 people to try to rewrite or to revise a document. And 10 people cannot, in a meeting, do any kind of revisions. I submitted a number of revisions, possible revisions, and then people said, oh, that's wordsmithing. So I would like to discuss in the meeting how we proceed so that within another month or two, we can have a revised ethics policy that could be presented to the board for a vote. And I feel the time for that is not at this meeting, but in the next work session. Let's decide how we want to revise, what procedure we want to follow in order to revise this document. And I have some suggestions I'll make at that time, if we can put this on the agenda.
So it sounds like what you want to do is remove the discussion of the actual ethics policy content and replace it with a discussion of how to proceed with
Yes.
revising it.
Yes.
And it sounds like one of the proposals is to create a committee to look at that.
Yes, you anticipate my,
So can I please back up and first correct some inaccuracies? We, and in particular, General Counsel, did not take it upon himself and go and write a policy. This was done from a process perspective with the past chair, and we discussed at length how to go about the process, and that was shared with the full board via email communication that we were taking legal requirements, governance requirements, and best practices and putting a draft together. And so the idea was that then the board would give feedback on that. So your characterization that a single staff member went and did something, I think, is very important to correct.
well,
I think that if
I'm
you-
not saying a single staff member took it upon himself. I'm saying the procedure was never discussed by the board, and you may have discussed it with the previous chair of the previous board, and we've already seen from the discussion we had that that process wasn't working. We were here trying to figure out what we're going to change, and we had 10 people all rattling in on this, and I am going to suggest we have a subcommittee to prepare a draft based on the legal information. We would work with Wes based on legal, one of the things I wanted to do was the board review what the legal requirements were. I also wanted the board to be informed by HR was what the gold standards were for this sort of thing, what other organizations like our own were doing. And I don't think we were making any progress, and I don't feel that if we proceed the way we are, we're going to end up with a coherent document. And so I am going to suggest, I would like to suggest at the work session that we appoint a committee to work with Wes to clean up this document and then present it to the board.
Do we need 60 minutes to do that?
I don't think we need 60 minutes. No, I think we can shave a good deal of time off of that.
So can I
Barry?
just clarify that the point of discussion is the process? It
Is the
is not,
process.
we're not making a resolution by a group of a subset of the board that we are already deciding there's a subcommittee. I think there would actually be a lot of staff feedback around that idea, but I just do want to be clear that we're changing it from content to process. That's what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
that,
Yes.
Okay?
yes. Sherry?
Well, I was going to say, so maybe we need to change the way it reads to draft ethics policy discussion. And it could be 30 minutes just to bring the new members up to speed and do whatever discussion has to take place in order to move this forward.
Yeah, so my main concern is, so the previous board, we spent 2 work sessions discussing this, and that's 2 work sessions that the 4 new board members obviously don't a part of. So my main concern is exactly yours, is how do we get the new members up to speed? Because these are fairly complicated topics.
Yeah, yeah.
Susan?
They could always watch those parts of the meetings, they're recorded, and they could see them very clearly.
There's a difference between watching a meeting and actually participating in a meeting.
I
So,
just was thinking that
Yeah,
it
I
would be
mean, that you-
clearer to watch than to have someone try to relate it to them.
but your point's well taken, but it's really the experience of participating in the meetings, which I think is an important experience for the new board members.
So are you moving that we change the wording to draft ethics policy discussion?
So that would, are you amending Dick's
I don't
amendment?
consider this to be a friendly amendment.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so
30 minutes, 30
So
minutes?
Sherry offers a friendly amendment to revise ethics policy revision to ethics policy discussion,
Draft.
draft ethics policy
Policy
discussion.
30 minutes?
And that'll go from 60 minutes to 30 minutes.
And what was the exact wording of that?
Sherry, could you repeat the exact wording?
Yeah, draft ethics policy discussion. And then reduce that amount of time since we've added other
30 minutes.
time. in.
So you got,
And so again, I need to be clear, this sounds like it is pure board discussion.
It's a what?
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Okay, so
So,
there is no staff role in that, got it.
okay, so we've got a motion by Dick, a second by Ginny,
Well,
and
I
if,
think it was, the motion was Sherry, and Dick second, well, whatever.
and a friendly amendment by Sherry.
Let's just say it's
I'll stay
Sherry.
out of it.
Very
Those
friendly.
two- those
I'll
two.
withdraw my motion, and let's get.
Okay, Sherry makes the motion to change it to draft ethics policy discussion, and I'll assume Dick seconds it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Um,
Any objections to this motion?
I'm voting against it. I think we should keep moving in the process and keep an hour and keep the process moving, but
I'm not sure that you have a vote.
I have a vote in this committee.
According to our charter, you don't
All
have
right,
a vote
can
on
we just,
anything.
can we move forward?
Draft in there.
Can we move forward, please?
Can I get
Either one, I mean,
can I get a show of hands? Who's in favor of this motion? Who's opposed to this motion? Motion passes. Any more discussion on the work session topics?
Yeah, last one. I just want to insert the word draft. President, CEOs, draft goals and objectives. Again, that's a discussion, right?
Yes, that's in the, everything's a discussion. This is a work session, so there are no votes during
so
the work session.
I would not say that's accurate. In our governance, I present my goals and objectives.
But,
That's what I'm required to do.
but the board
Did-
can comment, can have a discussion on it, can accept or change or do.
That's what you do at the vote.
Okay.
But my understanding, because I've asked this question repeatedly, and I went through it last year, is that the president presents what the goals and objectives are in my role. So that is not the board's role, but it is my goals and objectives for the organization. The board has some input on that.
So the way I understand it is the president presents the goals and objectives, and the board has a vote to approve those goals and objectives.
Or change, right?
Yes, I don't see how draft has a material effect on this.
Yeah, no, I
this line item.
withdraw it. I withdraw it. Okay.
Okay, so that is withdrawn. Any other proposed changes for the June 9th work session? Sherry?
Yeah, I just had a question for Susan. Are you going to be presenting the village excess cash reserves exception?
Yes.
Okay, so is that pardon me, I've just had a lot of stuff flowing in at me. Has that come out to the board yet? Any
No.
information on that?
No.
Okay, all right. So we'll get
Yep.
some information prior to that. And is 15 minutes enough, or is 20 minutes better for you?
I'm happy with 15.
You sure?
Yeah,
Good. Well, I've got extra time, so if she goes over,
I won't go over.
it's not the end of the world.
Well, I'm just thinking of questions and things that might come up, and better to add on more time rather than give you less time to operate with.
I'll be fine.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
So, seeing no other modifications, can I get it?
I have just a question here.
Sure.
We just got the policy book. What are we going to discuss this at some point in
Does
the
it-
next couple of months, or what?
Does it need to be discussed during a meeting? Does it need to be discussed during a meeting?
I just, I just, I think, I'd like to take a look at what we have here and, you know, is this official? Are we saying that this is the policy book, or is this something the board needs to discuss? I'm curious.
I believe that's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the policy book that was passed out at the last meeting is the current official policy guide.
It is a compilation of 149 independent policies that have been adopted by this board over the course of decades.
And this is the most up-to-date set of documents that we have regarding policies.
That the board has adopted.
That the board has adopted.
It is not all CA
No,
policies. It is not every policy that
yeah,
touches the board.
yeah.
Well, I mean, that's an important distinction. It's just board-approved policies.
Yes.
Yep.
Just want to clarify. So is there, Sherry?
Yeah, I think since it was just passed out at the last meeting, and especially because of the turnover on the board, I think that the new members have to, and the older members, have to get a chance to look through what's there, and we have to get a chance to look through there are policies, there are procedures. We do know from our past discussion, and this was before you got here, Lakey, it took a very long time to get any information under the previous administration, and then there were policies and procedures that seemed to be in conflict with one another or were not consistent with one another. So I think that that's something that the board is going to have to take a look at because of the process that started way before you got here.
So,
This
Yeah,
will
so
be
we-
sort of a continuation of what was started ways back to help the board to clarify what we're actually dealing with in terms of policies.
so if I might make an observation, so I've flipped through the book. It's organized by year, so it's, for someone just looking at the first time, it can be pretty intimidating. And we do have an extra half-hour slot here. So would it be helpful to add a half an hour, just an overview of what this document is?
So I want to be very clear. It is not what is being described. It is a compilation, and that's why it's chronological. We, as staff, have not done exactly what Sherry was describing, reconciling the policies. That the board is going to have to do, because you have policies that conflict with each other that have been approved by the CA board that conflict with other policies the CA board put forward. And so we, as staff, we're not going to take the step of reconciling those.
No, that's
So
our
it is
job.
literally, yeah, exactly.
That's
It
our
is-
job.
It is an inventory. So we did several months ago the electronic version, which was shared with all board members. It has a summary spreadsheet and everything's on the shared drive. What's in that policy book is we kept getting the request from individual board members to have a hard copy of it. So that is all that is. It is not a thematic, staff would have no ability to present this board book as some kind of cohesive guide to anything. I want to be very clear.
Understood, but I think it would be helpful for especially the new members who are seeing this for the first time, to actually just understand what the book is. Dick?
Yeah, I am
Exactly.
delighted that you've done this, and there's a lot of work, because Sherry and I took a shot at it once, and it's a brutal mess that you've collated and put together, and it's terrific. I'm really excited that we have this. But as you pointed out, it has contradictory stuff in it. It's this is organized by year. It might be helpful. What Wes had originally done is put together an outline, and he kind of categorized a lot of these pieces. So, this needs to be digested and discussed and taken a hard look at. And I think we got a great start on it.
No, I think it's a good topic. I was just clarifying the staff would have no role in
Oh, no,
presenting anything.
obviously,
'cause
we
it's just-
write
No,
the
no.
policies, so.
But obviously, one thing is if you do have any specific concerns that you want to bring up, this would be a good time to do that. If there's anything specific that you're aware of.
So I can't do that inside of a week and a half.
No.
I mean,
No, I'm not asking you to. I'm basically saying if you happen to know anything.
so what would you expect staff, so if the board puts on the June 9th agenda, because again, we've got to back a week up every time we do something on the staff side. So if you add 30 minutes to the June 9th agenda to discuss the board policy book, what would the staff be responsible for? That's what I'm trying to.
Yeah,
I'm not-
Or would it only be the board discussion?
So I'm
I can
actually.
give you something.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'd like the staff to highlight or just give us a summary of where there's a conflict and exactly what the conflict is.
Right, so I can't have staff do that in a week and a half.
So
That's way too
So-
involved. You know,
Very
I mean, we
No.
started in on this
Are there that
process.
many?
yes.
We started in on this process. We were inundated with information, and your point is well taken. I think this is going to be a much longer process, and I think it's something that the board has to address this year. This has been put off for such a long time, and the board has to step up and take responsibility.
I agree.
With that,
Actually, for the record, I'm actually not expecting staff to come up with anything.
Okay,
But
and again, I'm just clarifying, so I'm prepared.
But I do want to give staff the opportunity, if they are aware of something, to be able to bring it up. So I think that's fair.
Yeah.
So we'll leave it as board discussion.
Yeah, we'll leave it a board discussion, but if
The
you
only
have
other
something
thing-
pertinent, please bring it up.
Yeah, if I may. I had asked about some more recent policy statements that I know that the board had made. There were some that were about environmental topics. One was on, this came up in our watershed discussion, Watershed Advisory Committee discussion, about, for example, not using certain kinds of pesticides because they were bee killers and that type of thing. Those were policies that were voted on, but we never received the policy statement. So that's the only other thing that I can think of, that there may be some more recent policies that are actually in minutes,
But not in here.
but not yet in the, and I have not had a chance to look through the,
Okay,
So
can
as
through the
part,
whole
as part of the compilation, we went through meeting minutes. So I think it'd be one of those, maybe that could be the use of the discussion time is
Yeah.
what, some people that have been here a while think is missing, because we can't, if we don't have a written record of it, we can't know that it's missing.
yeah.
So-
And I think-
That's the only other thing I could think of, and I believe that there's an awareness of this, but where the document might be, that might take more time. So I'm not expecting
I think some of this.
staff to do
yeah,
this.
And I think some of this discussion is actually discussion for the work
Okay.
session.
Yeah,
So,
right.
so before we actually have all 4 meetings tonight, can I get a motion just to add a discussion of the board policies for 30 minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second? Any objections? No objections? Add board policy discussion for 30 minutes for a work session.
Policy book.
Board policy book discussion. Any other,
Well, if that's the case, can we call it compilation? And I only say that because I think policy book sounds like an organized, thematic,
yeah.
strategic.
I have no problem with that.
okay, that's fine.
Compilation.
Any other modifications to the June 9th policy?
No, but
To
it
direct
looks
the meeting.
like we have extra time, and I think what we need to be doing is looking at these task lists that we just got.
Do we actually have extra time? We just
I only
allocate.
have 10 minutes by my count, based on what I've added and deleted.
Same here.
So, I mean, 10 minutes is not a
That's
significant
it?
amount of time.
Yeah, because we added,
70 minutes of
Yeah, because we-
governance and standing topics.
because we lost 30 minutes, but we replaced it, and then we lost 15 minutes and we replaced it, so everything we deleted, we replaced.
Okay. Just trying to think if there's something on that task list that we just got, whether we,
Maybe on another meeting where we have more time.
Yeah.
Sherry?
There's
I just wanted to ask about the spotlight on Columbia. Is that just a different name?
Yes. We're
Oh.
changing the structure of it slightly, but it has a lot of the content of the development tracker, and we're trying to take a more holistic view. So it includes transportation and some other kind of component pieces.
Thanks.
Oh, so it's not just development?
It has everything we think touches development, I guess is what I'd say.
Oh, okay. Because, I mean, I think people will ask that question because.
Yes, and that's why we keep former development tracker. So people that are looking for it knows it's still there.
So, okay, can I get a motion to approve the June 9th Board of Directors work session as amended?
so moved.
Can I get a second? Are there any objections? Agenda is passed. Next on the agenda is the June 23rd Board of Directors meeting.
So I'll just make the note to pull the 5 minutes for the vote on the easement for Lumen Technologies. That's the one we removed. They weren't ready. So that's 5 minutes.
Can I?
And we want to add the vote on the advisory committees, which could wind up being a consent calendar, or maybe if somebody has a concern about one committee, have all the rest on a consent calendar and pull that one off, but we won't know at this point.
Can I get a motion to remove the easement request?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any objections? No objections, it's removed.
And a motion to add the advisory committees a vote on the advisory committees.
Can I get a second on that? Sherry seconds. Any discussion on adding the advisory committee to board votes?
Yeah. And what
Jenny?
you talk about?
Any discussion to,
No,
okay,
5 minutes,
5 minutes?
10 minutes to play it safe. You just don't know what's going to happen until
So
the
10
board,
10
especially
minutes.
the new members, hear these things.
Okay, any further discussion on the advisory committee votes on, adding advisory committee votes on board votes?
For how much time?
10 minutes.
10?
Are there any objections? It passes. It's added to board votes. Any other discussion on the June 23rd Board of Directors meeting? Sherry?
Yeah, it says the village excess cash reserves exception under the consent agenda. Wouldn't that go under votes? It was just presented at the last.
It's, I don't think it would be considered a major motion, so I don't know that it needs that many readings, but you could certainly move it to board.
I mean, if you want to, we just thought that it would be straightforward.
Yeah.
But
That's fine.
if you want to move it, you can.
Can I get
I
a,
think it would be more clear if it was under board votes.
can I get a second on that?
Second.
Any further discussion?
And how much time?
10 minutes?
Yeah.
10 minutes. Any objections to moving village excess cash reserves to board votes?
Nope.
So moved. Passes.
Okay.
Any further discussion on the June 23rd Board of Directors meeting?
Well, we got the ethics policy thing again on there.
Why don't we just leave it for
Okay.
now?
As it is?
You know, well, let's see what happens at the work session, and we can make adjustments
Okay.
if needed.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion on the 23rd?
No.
Just a minute. Do we want to put anything about the policy
Oh, yeah.
compilation
Yeah,
under board discussion?
What?
I have 25 minutes left with the changes we've made now.
Okay.
Is that what you have?
Yes.
Yep, 25 minutes.
So what about proposed, from the task, the task list? Other topics?
Or other topics? So there's 40 minutes dedicated to,
Had an
So
hour.
now we're
Yeah,
down to
topics.
25 because of the adjustments you made up top. So
Yes.
Susan and I are keeping a running
Yep.
tally, and
Yep.
we've got the same one,
okay,
25.
25 minutes, cool.
I'm thinking, after we discuss the policy compilation, would there be further discussion on, at the meeting?
So we've discussed this on the 9th. So you want to have, how much time do you want to allocate for further
I'm just-
discussion on the 23rd?
It's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, I think as we work our way through this thing, and it's all, and
Maybe
compare.
we take some each meeting kind of thing?
Yeah, so I'd just throw, you said we had 20 minutes, so
25 is what I've got. Yep.
I'd put in 20 minutes for that.
Can I get a second to add policy book compilation discussion to board discussion? Is that a second or
Yeah,
comment?
no, my only question about this is, we have work sessions, and then we have meetings
Meetings.
at which we are voting.
Yeah, this is
so-
a voting meeting.
This is a voting meeting?
Yes, this is a voting meeting.
Okay, so what from the task list requires action?
The one, you mean the one we just got today, the agenda topics list? Is that what you mean?
Sherry, can we hold off on this for a second to address Dick's motion to add discussion for the policy compilation discussion?
Okay, I'm fine with
Okay, can I get a second on that? Sherry seconds. Any discussion?
20 minutes?
20 minutes? Any objections?
No.
So added. Okay, now,
Well,
So I think we're done with that agenda then.
no,
Wait.
no.
You only have 5 minutes left.
discussion.
Well, I think Sherry was,
I mean,
okay.
5 minutes on that
All right, well,
agenda. I mean.
yeah,
I think we need to move down under discussion, the president's CEO goals and objectives as well. So I may not have any, oh, no.
well, I mean, you're moving it, so you're not actually adding or subtracting time.
No, I'm not adding, no. Just move it from board votes to discussion.
Well, I mean, the goal is to discuss it at the June 9th meeting and then vote on it at the June 23rd meeting.
Yeah, well, I'm just,
I think we can work that. I think we can work that if we have a thorough discussion of the work
short
session.
period of time.
So on the
How much
June,
time do we
on the
allow?
June 9th meeting, we've allocated half an hour to discuss the president's goals and objectives.
Yeah,
Well, we're hearing them, so we're not, we'll
well, we'll
go.
see them beforehand.
Yeah, we
We'll
should
see it.
get a copy beforehand.
It'll
Yeah.
be in the packet.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, but,
So what I propose doing is, it'll be in the packet, but I'll instruct board members to pay special attention and beforehand, so they should come prepared, knowing what the goals are, so we can have that discussion.
and you think we'll be ready on June 23rd to vote on it?
So I only have one comparison, and that's last year. And I made the presentation at one meeting, and there were a few comments and questions, and then it was voted on at the next meeting. So that's what was portrayed to me as what has happened year over year, regardless of the president. So I'm just giving the context that I've been provided and what I did last year.
How long is your presentation?
15 to 20 minutes.
So that'll give us 10 to 15 minutes of questions. The question is that adequate time to discuss them, to have a thorough discussion?
Well, if we all read it beforehand, we really need a presentation of it.
You want to put the extra 5 minutes under that?
You want to what?
I'm thinking of the previous meeting.
Yeah, this would be the previous meeting.
Yeah.
We don't have any time left on the previous meeting.
No, I'm just saying that we could have more discussion time if it doesn't have to be orally presented if we've all read it beforehand.
In my experience, it's important to orally present it because not every board member comes prepared ahead of time, and I think that's just a reality week to week. I mean, some people have time to prepare and some people don't. So, I mean, certainly I can not make it a lengthy presentation, but I think covering the content, I mean, it's not a questions-only kind of situation. I think it's important to have some presentation.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree,
It doesn't need to take
Yeah.
half an hour, though. If we can
Yeah, no,
have it
that's meant to be the
as
presentation and questions.
as streamlined as possible, then we can have a fairly decent conversation.
Okay.
And
Okay.
So what do you all think?
So right now it sounds like leaving it as a board vote on the 23rd seems like that's where
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
the committee is leaning.
Okay.
So, and we can play it from there. Any further discussion on the 23rd? Can I get a motion to pass the 23rd agenda as amended?
So
Dick?
moved.
Dick moves, Ginny seconds. You guys hand up first. Any further discussion? Any objections? Passes. Next on the agenda is the July 14th work section.
So I have another adjustment to this one. The BGE private utility easement needs to be deleted. It is still in staff review, and it's unclear whether they actually need an easement request. So we just need to pull it from the agenda for now because it's not, it's still in staff review and wouldn't be ready.
Can I get a motion to
For that one.
delete the easement?
Yeah, so moved.
Dick seconds. Any objections? It's removed. Any further comments or adjustments to the July 14th work session?
I was going over our 5-year strategic plan and our board priorities retreat, and I get the impression that we have drifted from some of that, and I would like to maybe it's time, particularly with the new board members, to review what our 5-year strategic plan is, and also what we had listed as our board objectives, because I haven't seen any mention of some of this stuff for over a year.
How far out does our 5-year plan go?
What?
And what year does it go
I think
to?
we got another 3 years on it. I could tell you, it's a 5-year plan. It was effective 2019. So
I got 2 years left. It goes to 2024.
it's another,
Correct. To this year and next year.
Sherry?
Yeah, just picking up on that, the board used to set board goals and objectives. And then at the end of the year, have sort of a reflective period of looking back and saying, well, did we hit the mark? And that added a little bit of process evaluation to the board. So as part of this work session, that might not be a bad thing to do. And to take a look at, especially if we are really trying to focus on alignment. I think things work best when we're working off of our strategic plan, but we've also got some concrete discussions about, not just about the generalities, but what can we do in particular to be meeting those original goals and strategies. So would this, be a time? I'm trying to think of what you're
I think we're.
aiming for. This might be a good time to do that.
Yeah,
and to
usually
have that.
We picked out, I think, 3 things each year that we were going to focus on, as I recall.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were 3 big if we can narrow it down to 3 big things, and make those very concrete kinds of objectives that lead to action. I think that would really help to maybe focus.
So I have one question on that. So when we did that in the past, did the board vote on it, or was it just,
Yeah,
is it?
we had, as I said, we started out, we had our strategic plan, and maybe we should dig that out of the archives. And we had board priorities. And
The,
I think that was
And the-
that really helped us focus on what we were trying to accomplish and gave us a chance to see how we done.
and the other question I had when we did that was, how was that scheduled relative to the president's goals and objectives? So the president,
Actually, it's kind of interesting.
How's the timing
because
work?
you'd think we would start with our strategic plan, or maybe Blakey would want to look at the strategic plan and key off of that when you put together your goals and objectives.
Well, we always try to reference. At one time, we had a form where we actually did that. We referenced what part of the strategic plan it was referring to. So there's an environmental section, and there's there are 5 big sections,
Right.
if I'm recalling it. So,
There you go.
no, I've got it somewhere.
she's got it memorized.
So that's the kind of thing that would be maybe helpful in a presentation, both for the president and for the board, to be looking at where does it fit into those categories. So it's not this sense that we're recreating the wheel every year. We're going back to what the overriding, philosophy, values, and principles were, and then we're making it something concrete that we can accomplish at the strategy level, and maybe policy, if policy needs to be brought into focus. And then Lakey and the staff are looking at the administrative pieces that they can be doing this year that are also concrete and objective. So it's kind of working in tandem. The board voted on the board and staff all worked together on the 5 elements and the strategic plan. And then the board can vote on its own goals and objectives for the year.
So the question I have is regarding the strategic plan, which sounds like the president would key off of and the board would key off of. Are you proposing that strategic plan gets presented at the 14th? Because that seems a little late for the president to be keying off of it.
Would have been nice to
little
have it on the
confused.
26th, actually.
Well, but we can't
So
go back
can we,
and...
I do think it's important to remind everyone, as Dick just mentioned, that it was adopted in 2019. It was pre-COVID. So there are some significant impacts to the organization that I think were not the focus in 2020. Obviously, I came in 2021, and I went off the board priorities that were identified in a retreat that the board held. So I don't have an impression the strategic plan went out the window. We, reference it in many of our documents, including our budget, and we have consistently tied it in presentations and use it as a guiding document. There are elements of it that have continued to be implemented. Our climate vulnerability assessment that we just accomplished this year was a component of it. So I guess I'm trying to understand revisiting it in terms of what the board wants to focus on for the year. I mean, I thought your comment about the board setting goals and objectives and then actually using the year end to look back and hold the accountability of did we focus on those things? Because I think that's part of, right, even how we develop the agendas. I mean, are we moving things forward? I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, but the strategic plan is a 5-year we reference it. Certainly, there are things I did last year that fit inside the strategic plan, but if there's something specific, I guess I would need to hear that discussion, which sounds like would be beneficial.
I guess one concern is how do the new members get up to speed on what the strategic plan is?
Right.
It's on the website.
Susan had her hand up.
No, I was just going to say that you had asked Eric how the board's goals and objectives related to the president's, and they were separate. They were, in fact, the board's objectives often related to a calendar year process. So it wasn't even aligned with the same timing. So I just wanted to provide that context.
So,
And this was things that the board would work on as opposed to, to what the president would be doing.
So the question I have is, do you want to have better alignment going forward? Or is having two separate alignments the optimal path? Dick?
Well, I think Blakey makes a good point. We did come up with the 5-year plan before COVID. And all I was hoping we could do is revisit the plan, review it, talk about it, introduce it to our new board members, and maybe get kind of a general consensus on whether it's still valid or whether we need to amend it at a later date. And perhaps the next BOC would be able to riff off of that discussion too, as they're looking at future board agendas.
Okay, so Jerry?
Yeah, I was going to say, Susan makes a good point, too, that there is a timeline for board action that we also should be taking a look at to know when certain things have to be plugged in. For example, with the MBE modifications that we made, we need to have time for that evaluation process and that report in September. That has not been on the calendar before, so it's got to be incorporated. So I would like to see that review of the strategic plan, the elements of the strategic plan, and and I think that that's something that really could come from the board. I don't think that discussion has to take up a lot of staff time, but it's a review of the documents. And I know Andy and I had gone over that timeline. I think this was the year before you came on, Lakey, to know where to plug in certain elements and to make sure that things didn't drop off as the BOC revisited stuff. So I think it would be good for all 10 board members to have that same document.
So we've got, so it sounds like what we need is a discussion of the strategic plan and also a discussion of board goals and objectives for the current fiscal year. And we've got 20 minutes left for this meeting?
I've got 35 total.
So do I.
Yep,
30 minutes?
35, yeah.
I would give 30 minutes for sure.
30 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, so I got a motion by Sherry. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ginny. Any further discussion?
I have a clarification. So
Sure.
strategic plan discussion, or you want it to say strategic plan and board goals and objectives?
I think,
Just-
and board goals
Yes.
and objectives.
Okay.
Any objections? Passes. Any further discussion on the July 14th agenda?
Yeah, under proposed new topics, two things. One, Sherry's saying basically, and I totally agree with, like with the minority business, we made a commitment to do X, the organization did, at a certain time period. But I don't see where that's being recorded. I'm looking under agenda topics, agenda tracking log. I don't, maybe it's here someplace, I'm just looking at this. But where do we record that so that we know when the BOC meets, it gets that in advance so it can look over that material and know, well, needs to be on agenda. We're missing that part.
That's how we populate the draft agendas?
So that's for September was what as Sherry
Yeah.
noted. So this is just through July.
So
But that's how we put together the draft agenda. You'll notice it says governance and standing topics required. And so the way these are broken out is the first section is governance, and the second section is board requested standing topics. And so when we go to put these drafts together, Janet Lochner and I work on off that list. And that's exactly how they're drafted. Obviously for you to approve, but that's how they're drafted.
Okay, so where, in other words, under something like that would be under what?
You know, Jenny, I think if we actually had a timeline, it used to be a board timeline, it was just a listing of all the things that the board had to do in the course of a year, and to plug those things in. So we have, for example, budget always fits in there. We have other things this September report out. Those things can go in monthly. It's just like a monthly calendar, and maybe the board should have, everyone should just have a copy
Yeah,
of
just
that.
a calendar of everything that needs to be done. So,
Yeah.
you know, the budget needs to be passed, this policy
Yeah,
needs
so
to be
everybody
passed.
can preview
So everybody-
what the upcoming
everybody
year
knows
is.
Yeah.
And,
So-
and then the new people have to, get that
So-
understanding also of what those tasks are going to
So
be.
I don't think this requires a discussion for this meeting.
No.
Can that calendar be produced?
There,
I think so. It'll take some time. I mean, I can't commit to a timeline right now, but, I mean, yes.
So, yeah, I think it would be helpful for that calendar to.
And I want to
be-
understand what are monthly tasks?
Basically, a list of tasks to the way I understand it, we take the fiscal year and we have a list of tasks that the board needs to do for the course of the fiscal year, such as pass a budget or pass this policy by this date or that policy by that date. Obviously, we were basically hitting on the major ones. But yeah, that's the general idea is so that all board members know what to expect over the course of the year.
I'll give you another one. When the legislature meets. So what we have been trying to do is to load things earlier so that we're getting a legislative report early on, so that if the president needs to give testimony or there's something that comes up, that we're there at the beginning of the process, that we get a preview of it. But if that's not in that timeline, it's very hard to know when that needs to come up. So that's another one.
And another example is like if we need something passed by this date,
Yeah.
you need a vote here. If you need 3 readings, okay, I need to back up. I need a reading
Right,
here, a
right,
reading there,
exactly.
so that we're not trying to change policies and procedures right beforehand. So I think this calendar would be very helpful for the board.
So I do want to just state, just to make sure that it's clear, I mean, a lot of what you're describing is in this agenda's topic log, but I hear what you're saying, that you want to see it in a calendar format. I think some of the deadlines you're referring to, and this is where it gets a little, I guess, complicated with this board, is that there is so much self-governance that, like the budget schedule, we have to adopt that every year. We actually come to you to adopt the schedule.
Yes.
So even though it's similar, if we were to put out a monthly calendar, we don't know how that schedule is going to work until we go to the board. So there's some things that have dates, but then there are some things that the self-governance means that you actually decide. And if we were to make an assumption that it's going to be exactly like it was the year before, I think that could, create a different kind of problem.
it doesn't have to be a public document.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be public.
It could be just for the board and the staff.
And you could also note things that this is an approximate date or this is subject to board approval. So you can add caveats, and that would be
Right.
helpful also.
When I was going through some stuff for the meeting tonight, I saw a sheet of paper, and I don't think it was for this year, but it did give a calendar, and it did point out certain things that ought to be
Yeah,
considered, in a timely manner.
yeah.
And it usually suggested for each month, what really had to, what had to be examined. And I thought that was a very useful list. I thought I brought it with me.
Yeah, I agree. I think this concept is fairly clear. So,
It's probably
Concept is
floating
very
around
clear.
somewhere.
I wasn't saying it wasn't.
yeah, no, so basically what I want to do is I think we can move on. So can I get a motion to approve the July 14th?
Well, no, I've got,
one more
we
thing?
have a couple of minutes here for something else.
5
No.
minutes.
Yeah,
What?
five
We have 5
minutes.
minutes.
left.
Okay,
That's my chair remarks.
well, we're dependent on the staff or others to give us some advice on when the board would need an update on the Lake Elkhorn project. We've talked about that we were going to get one when it reached certain points, but I don't see anything on any of these agendas on this. And I would hate to have us in a position where, again, if we have an opportunity to comment, I'm not saying which way or anything, just to comment or learn something, and we wind up getting the briefing when the deadlines have passed.
Do you know what the timeline is on that project?
I'm saying it's staff.
So there's
has-
nothing on here because we don't have a timeline. Where we are is waiting for the regulatory agencies to provide any feedback. We have none. And they have no timing that they have to give us anything. We're literally just waiting.
Okay,
So we as CA, anyone in the community, the regulatory agencies, we have no time.
that's fair enough. If they come back with something, we have to act quickly, we'll obviously have to make modifications if we have to act quickly.
Yeah, I mean, we've received no deadline. Update, we ask intermittently, hi, is there any update? And
Hello, we're still here.
That's fair enough.
So is there an understanding now that the process would be that when you get notified on Monday, the board would be notified immediately that you have 10 days to respond and the board would get a quick briefing or something like that? I mean, is that our understanding or
well,
not?
what you said was very specific. I don't know what the update would be. The update may not have anything to do with the decision point.
So,
But I mean, if we had an update on the process, we would provide an update to the board, just like we provided multiple email updates during the process to the board.
so the question I have is, for some reason that an update came in and the board had to act immediately, we could schedule a separate meeting for that. If it was.
If there was some situation where that occurred, I'm happy to inform the board when we have an update. That's what I'm committing to, but I can't foresee a situation where there would be a need to have an emergency
Okay.
meeting, because we're literally waiting on regulatory agencies to say yes or no to a permit for a mitigation bank. There's nothing happening.
Okay.
It's just administrative.
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the 14th work session as amended?
Sure, I'll do that.
Can I get a second?
Yeah.
So I got a motion to approve it by Dick, a second by Ginny. Any objections? 14th is passed.
Okay,
Last on the list is on the list of meetings is the July 28th Board of Directors work session. Do I have any discussion or any modifications to it?
No modifications from our side.
Okay, thanks. Dick?
I have a question. Back when we were discussing the Symphony Lights legal, there was a global agreement that was going to be arrived at, and the board asked that we have that information by March, and nothing came of it. Yeah, I've got to be careful what I say because this is an open meeting, but I would like at some point to get some kind of an update as where we are in those discussions, and probably be a closed meeting.
So in an open meeting, I can say that you are privy to the information that there were other legal matters going on between organizations that were involved that were not us. And we have not received official notification that the global agreement has been achieved. I have heard it verbally, but we've yet to receive any written notification. So I'm very unclear. I can ask the outside counsel to check on the status, but I don't have any status to offer.
Again, I'm being careful here. It was my impression that we were a party to some of that. But maybe, well, as I recall the discussion that we had, we pushed up the date when we wanted to have that feedback, that agreement actually, and again, heard nothing. So you know,
I'm not sure what you're referring to now.
well, again, we're not in a closed meeting, but there was some discussion about getting this agreement settled in 6 months, and we said we wanted it in 3 months, and that was agreed to.
Yeah.
And it did involve CA.
So Dick, just, again, we're in an open meeting. So the question I have is, do we need a closed meeting to discuss these concerns?
No, that's what I'm suggesting.
So that would not go on this
This
meeting here.
I just had a list of things that were hanging, and that was on the
Okay,
list.
so I'm thoroughly confused. So what are we at? We're now talking about a closed meeting, not the July 28th meeting?
Maybe we should talk separately about
Yeah, maybe we should
Yeah, I can
discuss this
think of other
offline
things
to,
for a closed meeting too.
yeah, so maybe,
Personnel.
maybe we should figure out what we need to discuss in a closed meeting
Yeah.
and handle that outside of this BOC meeting.
I agree, yeah.
That sounds like a solution.
Any further comments on this agenda? Sherry?
Yeah, under the budget schedule, so that is looking at in effect, the timeline for FY 2024. But one of my concerns is that we hardly ever have an opportunity to go over things around membership fees, resident participation rates, things of that kind with regard to the budget. So maybe this year we can schedule in either additional time to talk about that as part of the budget process. But I was also thinking that if we have done the work on board goals and objectives, that this would be a very good follow-up discussion around that topic. And since we have dashboard on here, that might be a very good link to this kind of larger discussion. So rather than just do that one piece on budget, to link it up to a more strategic discussion.
So it sounds like you want the ethics policy revision to cover, or not the budget schedule to cover not just dates, but also the process of developing the budget.
So I need to call your attention, July 14th, we have the discussion for 20 minutes on the budget schedule. What you're referring to on July 28th is 5 minutes for the vote.
Right, okay. So that's the follow, so we've got the discussion.
On the 14th for 20
Okay.
minutes.
The question
Okay.
is 5 minutes for the vote sufficient?
All right, so maybe what I'm thinking of is that it goes more under board discussion.
Yeah, I think you're right, yeah. Because the other is just a simple calendar, right? Susan just gives us, these are the dates,
Right.
yeah.
And so on the 14th, we have a discussion of the budget schedule.
But that should be processed too, on the 14th, right?
Yeah, it's 20 minutes. We're not going to take 20 minutes to put it forward. That's for, again, it's under work session, discussion. So yes, it would be board discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right, like, that
Yeah.
would be a good place
Yeah, that-
to introduce
I
that
think
as far as the
here,
schedule.
yeah.
Yes, you're right,
Yeah, so-
you're right. And then the board vote
Yes.
on the following, yeah,
So
at the meeting.
So the question I have is, will 5 minutes for the board vote be sufficient for that?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
think
if it's
so.
if it's
Yeah.
just the schedule, yeah.
Yeah, we've had the previous discussion
Okay.
right about that.
That
Yeah.
sounds good. Any other comments on the 28th agenda?
Well, I'd like to suggest that budget discussion, because it's at a time when we're not pressured
Yeah.
to be taking votes on budget. The staff is still, not under pressure to be presenting anything. So I think that that's a good sort of breathing room
That's a good point.
for us to look at some of those more strategic kinds of questions.
The membership.
And we haven't had a chance to do that also because of COVID. I mean,
Yeah.
we know that.
So-
We've been dealing with a
I
lot
do-
of other stuff.
So we got 45 minutes.
Well, I do have an important qualification here. So you'll notice that we're at year end and fourth quarter. So if the board wants to discuss conceptually what you want to include in budget, I think that we could prepare for that. I cannot ask that same staff at year end and at fourth quarter and at audit to prepare new content for the budget at that same meeting. That's just not going to be capacity-wise feasible.
I don't think we need that
Okay, so
information.
board discussion.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is a board discussion that I'm hoping will be more of a higher level strategy,
Okay.
Okay.
and also a look at previous policy, as how strategy and policy work with what we decide on as our goals and objectives for the year is what the board really should be aiming for. That's going to give everybody else much clearer guidance.
So you're proposing 30 minutes for
That's what I was
for strategy?
30 minutes.
30 minutes for general strategy discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that would be great.
So budget strategy.
Because we're off in August, so you want to get something going where
Yeah.
people don't have time to be working on it in August.
So Sherry moves. Can I get a second to add?
A second.
Jenny seconds to add 30 minutes to discuss budget strategy for under board discussion for the 28th. Any objections? No objections. Any further discussion on the meeting of the 28th?
Can I just put in budget strategy and policy so that it keys off that we need to look at the previous policy?
So amended.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, what do you mean by policy? Because my note said goals and objectives, so what do you mean by policy?
Whatever policies are
Saying
guiding
Should we be saying outreach as well? to show
budget,
the
both in
residents
terms of process and in terms of strategy.
Okay.
That's part of this
Yeah,
clearing out where we are and what we might yet need to do in the future.
So what is the agenda item then, Reed?
It'd be budget strategy and policy, 30 minutes for board discussion.
Thank you.
Discussion.
Ginny?
My only remaining concern on that is I wonder what message a resident will get when they read this line in the agenda, as opposed to, should we be saying something about an outreach or resident feedback or something like that, that shows part of the strategy is how we're going to reach people and how we're going to get feedback on the budget, et cetera. I assume that would be covered under some of this board discussion.
I think that could be a concrete action
Yeah.
that
yeah.
comes out of this discussion.
Okay,
But
yeah,
I-
what I'm trying to
Yeah.
do is not have the residents thinking, we're just going to do this all on our own and we don't care what you think, which isn't true. So how do we make sure, marketing guy, that we get that across?
So are you proposing that this becomes more specific? Does it need to become more
I think if we're
specific?
talking general
I think it will
strategy
be somewhat-
and policy, it's premature for us to put in that, what the community input, that's something that
Yeah,
would be covered at
Yeah,
that
keep
time.
in mind that community input will also come
Yeah.
during the resident speakouts on the course of the budget
Yeah,
discussions.
So as a topic here, I would simply say budget strategy and policy discussion.
Okay.
So
I wouldn't want to get into tactics.
And I would add that would be part of the calendar too, with Lakey's leadership last year, adding those multiple outreach activities, multiple surveys and forums. So that would be built into that discussion.
So that,
And that's where this alignment, I think, really comes up, that we keep our focus on that, and it could come up a second time in that board discussion, just as a support for that. I think it will come up, certainly.
sounds good. So we are past this motion. So are there any other discussion on the 28th? I think that we still have 15 minutes to spare.
Nope.
Okay. Move to question. Can I get a motion to approve the 28th agenda as amended?
moved.
Can I get a second? So I got a motion by Ginny, a second by Dick. Any other discussion? Are there any objections? Motion passes.
I just did have a point of information. Lakey, where it says financial reports is the fourth quarter report. The dashboard, is that also a cumulative report, like a fourth quarter?
Yes,
Yep.
That's a
quarterly.
cumulative.
right.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so now we're on to item 6, administrative items. Any further administrative items, Lakey?
I don't think we have any now.
Okay, item 7, talking points.
Not a talking point, but I just would like to ask something at some point.
Okay, sure.
In terms of, before we leave, I would just like to get a clearer understanding of what the process is for developing an agenda, because I looked at the last BOC meeting, and they met and discussed the March and April agendas. They didn't do the May agendas. And who's supposed to have a role in preparing the agendas? I know what happened in the past, but what's happening now? What's the process? And
So
what
as far as I
documents
know,
do
we're
you-
doing what had been done previously, which is the BOC sets the agendas. We as staff have done the organizational meeting always historically. We had discussed as a board that we were, and I also had communication with the subcommittee. It was part of what was discussed when the subcommittee brought forward the recommendations that the advisory committees would present in May. And so because that takes an entire agenda, we had talked last July about moving it up to May as a full board because it actually times that when the new board members come in, they actually get a really good, quick review of all the advisory committees and what they're doing. So I think that's your question about May in terms of how it's developed. As I mentioned a moment ago, we as staff, and my understanding is we've done this for many years, look at governance and the standing topics, just like the board topics log is organized, and we put together a draft. And that's it, based on time, and it goes in front of the BOC. So whoever's on the BOC gets the vote to determine what the agendas are for approximately the upcoming 2 months or so, depending on kind of the month of the meeting. Depending on November, December, we only have 2 meetings. So that's the process. So I think in short, the answer is the BOC makes the decision on what's on an agenda for the board.
Okay, a question about, you're saying then that the chair of the board has no role at all in this except when it gets to the BOC, and has never had it in the past. The chair of the CA Board of Directors has never worked with staff to help develop the BOC agendas or board agendas.
Well, I can't answer the question of never in the past. I mean, I haven't been here
You've
for
never worked
55
with the
years.
chair in the past to develop agendas?
Agendas? No.
Well, it has happened in the past, so I was kind of surprised that
I completely disagree with you. If you're talking about me, are you talking about me right now? Or are you talking about in the 55 years?
I don't know about 55 years, but I do know that it's happened in the past where the chair's been involved.
So prior to me,
I was asking you if you did it last year.
and I answered you and said no.
You did answer it, so I didn't challenge that. I just said, okay, but I know it happened in the past.
Okay, yeah, I can't speak to before me, but that's not my understanding from staff. My understanding from staff is that it has been done in the president's office and it's brought to the BOC. The BOC could change every single thing on the piece of paper, and
Okay,
that's how the decision
there's
is
two
made.
things here that I'd appreciate anyway. One, on any agenda, I thought we did this at sometimes, but to make it easier for a resident to be able to speak out, it would be really nice, and I thought we had said we'd be doing this, to have a link right there. So when they see the agenda, they click onto that link and they can then go into the registration right away to speak
We
out.
have not done that previously, but you're asking.
Yeah, we did that, that you said that was, I guess, prior to
I was gonna say,
prior
okay,
to you
not in
being
my
here.
opinion.
It's a way of communicating.
I just want to be clear, so we're now not talking about who does the agenda, we're now talking about you would like a link
It's basically an
on the resident speak out, where it says resident speak out, you would like that to hyperlink to the website.
Absolutely. I thought we had discussed
to
that.
the agenda on the website.
Yeah.
To the PDF.
Well, to.
No,
the-
she's
the
saying
way-
to register.
To the, where it says resident speak out.
Oh, I see,
The link
yeah.
so that they can register right away.
Okay.
Sometimes people have a lot of trouble finding things on our website, so it would be, make life easier if you
yeah.
really want to encourage communication. That would be nice. The other is, the board.
Is there general consensus of the BOC to add that?
Yes.
I mean, it seems simple enough to do.
I think that's a real
Yes.
good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I apologize. I thought.
Just to make it
Thought we
easier.
had
Yeah,
decided
that's an
on that a
accessibility.
while ago, but maybe I misunderstood.
No, that's
I wasn't
that's a
involved
great
in that
accessibility.
decision.
No, I
Yep.
mean, in the past year, okay.
Yep.
The second thing is, for the BOC to function, and this is just my 2 cents, it would be really helpful if they had the agendas and the backup material that you used to create the agendas in advance, not looking at them today. It puts the BOC members that are sitting here at a big disadvantage. So if that could be done, I mean, if that has to be done.
What kind of backup material?
What they use to develop these agendas, the board task lists, et cetera. You just got this, an email.
Yeah, adding the task list
At
to
6:20 today.
to this packet would be useful. So that's
So
basically the
I guess
background
we're
material.
going on the record, and I'll clearly state that you normally do have it ahead of time. I'm going to point out that we are at year end, we are at the start of a new fiscal year, we are at new board members, and we are in that onboarding process, combined with a unique situation that our board operations coordinator has been out with knee surgery. So I do apologize that you did not get the board agendas topics log until today. If you want that to have a blame, it is on me. But I do want to say that normally, we include the board agenda topics log with the draft agendas. We have done that every quarter I've been here, except this one.
Thanks. Thank you.
I'm just,
Thank you.
I don't think we need to get defensive. I'm just saying it should be done, and
All right,
that's it.
so thank you.
Thank you.
For clarifying that, and we are,
Yeah.
I think we are trying to be supportive of staff and you during this period. This is a wrap-up period.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Before we adjourn, I do have one question about the advisory committee report outs. Are those going to be virtual, or are the chairs allowed to present in person? How's that going to work?
It's all virtual. The staff liaisons have let the chairs know, just based on the room and continuing with social distancing. We've asked all the chairs to present virtually. That actually worked substantially better for them last year. That was the feedback we got.
Okay. So can I get a motion to adjourn, assuming there's no further discussion?
So moved.
A motion by Ginny, a second by Dick. Any objections to adjourning?
No.
Meeting adjourned